Hello, and welcome to Sum of Your Parts podcast, where you find out you're greater than the sum of your parts. I'm your host, Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. This is our introductory podcast, and I'd like to welcome you all here. We're all friends, and I'm your guide to wellness and health. So, a little bit about myself. I am a trained urogynecologist, and we're going to take it back a little bit further than that. I was always interested in medicine from a young age and gynecology nonetheless, and I didn't even really know that. But I remember when I was about 4 years old, my mom was pregnant with my sister, and she had these books on delivery, and I was obsessed with the pictures of the uterus and the baby inside the uterus, and just like any kid, just very fascinated with the whole idea of birth and reproduction. And around the same time, this was in the 70s, there was a TV show called Emergency that was a TV show it was a paramedic company from California. And looking back on it, I don't know if I would be having my 4-year-old watch that show, but this was the 70s, it was a different time. I was obsessed with watching these storylines of there was accidents and emergencies and people got sick, and these paramedics would go out and save them. And there was the firefighters and there was the doctors on the TV, and I just absolutely loved this show. But I didn't know at that point in time that I wanted to be a doctor. Like most people, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So, but I just found myself very attracted to the sciences and the health industry. And then I went to college and I did my studies, and comes to end of college and it's like, well, you got to go on and do something else. And I still wasn't quite sure what I wanted to be. I knew I was interested in medicine, but I'm not one of those people that could say, oh, my whole entire life all I ever wanted to be was a doctor. No. So I applied to a couple different schools. I was interested in veterinary medicine. I was interested in human medicine. I was interested in genetics. So I applied to a bunch of different programs, and I got into medical school, and I got into osteopathic medical school. And I had no clue what in the world an osteopath was or osteopathic medicine. And when I went for my interview and to see the campus, they explained to me that osteopathic doctors basically have a different view of medicine than our MDs. So let me back up. In the United States, allopathic doctors, which are MDs, and osteopathic doctors, DOs, are both considered your traditional physicians. They both are able to practice medicine, write prescriptions, and perform surgery. Some of the other specialties, depending on the state to state, they have different regulations, but on a whole, your traditional medicine falls into either allopathic or osteopathic. So you'll see an MD or a DO. So I remember when I was applying for school and the different theories between the osteopathic medicine and allopathic medicine, DOs had a more of a holistic, whole body approach. It's not to say that one is better than the other. Of course, though, I'm a little preferential towards the osteopathic, and this is why I picked it, because I didn't believe that it was just the one part of your body that was the issue. I believe that every part, mind, body, spirit, can affect your health. And so I felt at home with osteopathic medicine. I said, this is great. The history of osteopathic medicine goes back to the 1800s with Andrew T. Still. He was an MD, and back in the 1800s, there was a movement. In medicine, a lot of the medications were not, it's not like the FDA that we have today. There was not any kind of regulation on medicines. And a lot of medications back then contained mercury, and in levels that were poisonous. So people were dying from their medicines and they weren't getting the treatment. So Andrew T. Still, who was an MD, decided there's got to be a better way to use your own body to heal itself. And so what he did was he studied at length about the body systems and how the skeletal system interacts with the organs of the body. And he came up with this area of practice where using the body to heal itself. And part of that was to keep things in alignment. And it's interesting because when you think of alignment, we think of chiropractors. And that's interesting because one of Andrew T. Still's students went and took it more to an extreme and ended up forming chiropractic medicine. So what he looked at was the body's innate ability to heal and its ability to tell us what's wrong. So that if one of your vertebrae in your back is out of alignment, that might not just be that you're out of alignment, that may be a sign that there's something else going on. There's certain levels, say your T8, which is one of your vertebrae, if that's out of alignment, that can be a sign of a gallbladder problem. And it's really the interaction between the muscular system and the organs and just how the body works as a whole system. And I think what's important and where we're seeing health and wellness, it's much bigger today, is that this awareness that the body wants to heal. It wants to go back to homeostasis. It wants to be whole. And so I was attracted to osteopathic medicine, and I went to school and went to all my classes, and it was so much fun. And I never ever had the attitude like, I'm a doctor, I'm wonderful. I never had that God, I'm a doctor complex. In fact, actually, when my day-to-day activities, I don't usually tell people that I'm a physician. I only pull out the doctor card when I absolutely have to, if I get pushed. But some people say you need to be proud of who you are. I am proud, but I find that doctor doesn't define me. It's what I do. It's not who I am. And I think that's a difference. And just like with any people, doctors have been put on pedestals for years. And I think the population is smartening up because there's so much more information out there and there's so much more education and people are starting to question. And it's not so much do as I say because I'm the doctor. I believe the role of a physician or any kind of health practitioner, is to say, here's the information I have. I have information that can help you. Now it's your job to take that information and decide how to apply it if it's something that makes you comfortable. Because the truth is, I as a physician, I cannot heal you. No physician out there can heal you. You cannot be healed unless you choose to be healed. And I think that's very, very important. I really believe in what I term the Dorothy Complex. So you think of the Wizard of Oz, and Dorothy's, taken off by this tornado and ends up, in Oz, and she's looking to get home and be back with her family. And she's going to person after person after person looking for the answers. And what happens at the very end? The power for her to go home was within her the whole entire time. And I think that's the biggest, largest message that I want to give to people. And that's pretty much the basis of this podcast, is that we can give you the tools, we can give you the information, but you're the one that can heal you. It's just a matter of finding it within you. So I'm very excited about the podcast because we have so many different topics. It started off as I wanted to have a podcast that looked at just your different parts and let's learn about this part of the body and how we can heal it. But it kind of took on a life of its own and it got a lot bigger than that. And I realized that just like my osteopathic medicine, I can't break things down into part by part because we're a whole system. We're a person. We're a spirit, mind, body. There's too many factors that make up who we are. And so our topics are going to be pretty wide. There are going to be some health topics talking about specific conditions. There'll be some that may tend to stray from that parts theme, but they're all related to wellness and tools to how to heal yourself. Also, one thing I'd like to point out is that this podcast is in no way something that you have to listen in order. Of course, I would love it if you listen to every single one of them, but look at the topics, pick and choose what applies to you. The interesting thing is that there may be something that doesn't apply to you, but take a listen, and maybe you have a friend or a family member that could get something out of this information. Then you can pass that information along. I think, each episode, we're going to have some great tidbits of ways to heal and ways to be better in our life. And what I'm finding in medicine is that, let me go back a little bit. We'll go back to my training. So I went through medical school and graduation was coming up, and it was like, okay, you're going to be a doctor. Now, what kind of doctor do you want to be? And I know a lot of people, there were people that I went to school with who walked in and I'm going to be an orthopedic doctor. Like, I know exactly what I want and I'm going to be that. And they were that from the moment they walked in school to the moment they left school. And once again, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to be. I know I wanted to help people. That was my goal. I want to help people. I want to be useful. I want to have an impact in the world. I want to be able to make people's lives better. That was my main goal. Now, how to do that? Still wasn't quite sure. So I ended up doing a year of what's called internship, traditional rotating internship, where you were officially a doctor once you graduated medical school, but now you did another year of training where you did a little bit of everything. And as I went through medical school, I found myself kind of rating things like, oh, I like this subject the best. I like that one the worst. And that's kind of how I went through and figured out what fit me. And at the time, I was very attracted to surgery. And it's funny because of my interest in psychology and psychiatry. Now, looking back, I was not at all interested in psychiatry because I'm an empath. I take on other people's feelings. I take on other people's, basically, their sadness and their stress, because I want to help them. And so psychiatry was very difficult for me because I couldn't fix anybody. Even though I wasn't the doctor, like, I gotta fix you, I couldn't fix them. Like, I would take their problems home with me and I would think about it and be like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna fix, how am I gonna help them? How can I get them to a better place? So psychiatry was a little bit too stressful for me when I went through it. And so that got put on the bottom. But then once I got out into practice, I realized you can't separate these things. You can't separate the mind from the body. And I started to practice medicine and addressing more the psychological aspect of things. So here I am in residency. I couldn't decide between general surgery, urology, and OBGYN. I liked them all. And so I applied, and I heard back from general surgery, and I took my spot. They answered first, so that was meant to be. So I started general surgery, and I loved it. It really was good. Like any doctor that was doing training back during this time, this was like the late 90s. Work hour restrictions, at least in New Jersey, were not in force yet. And so there were times where I'd work 36 hours straight. I think actually we figured out the most hours I worked in a week was 120 hours in a week. And this is where, thank God, things have changed, because the health system we know the effects of sleep deprivation. How can you make a proper decision? How can you treat your patient? I remember being so incredibly sleep deprived that I would pray to God that I would pass out, because then nobody could fault me for going to sleep and getting some sleep. And that's not the way to that our healthcare professionals need to do things. But that's a topic for a whole nother day, and we can get into that, is the hazing of doctors and how that ends up creating a sick medical system. And we'll do that topic another time. But so it wasn't that I didn't like general surgery, but I found, once again, as an empath, I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to get their feel on things. And some of the best general surgeons I know are, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, are basically body mechanics. And I mean that in a good way, because they're able to separate the emotion from their patients and get the work done. Get in there, fix the organs, fix the bones, get it done, and on to the next. And like I say that with a bad tone, but the truth is that's what you want your general surgeon to be. You want your general surgeon to be a little bit on the cocky side, though there are some that are not, and they're very caring, but you want them to be able to separate the emotion from the work that needs to be done. And I was not that person. I became very upset when a patient died. And patients die every day. It happens. I mean, the most perfect surgery can be performed, and there's so many factors that go into healing. Things that doctors can't control, things that you can't control, and things that surgeons can't control, and things just happen. And sometimes it's just that person's time to go. But that was very difficult for me to deal with, losing a patient that I had become attached to, because I would talk to the patients. I wanted to know how they were feeling after their gallbladder was out, not just physically, but emotionally, because there is that connection. There is, anytime after you've had surgery, that in that instance where you're in pain initially, right after surgery, there's that, ooh, did I do the right thing? Like, oh, this hurts. Like, was it the right thing? Like, I'm having second thoughts. Well, you can't have second thoughts after the appendix is out. And, there's things that, there's a difference between elective surgery and emergency surgery. You still go through those stages of healing and questioning, like, wow, why'd this happen? And was this the right thing? But, things have to get done. So I've completed half of my general surgery residency, and I just felt like I needed something more. And also, it was around the same time that I met my future husband and started thinking about the ideas of having a family. And for me, general surgery, though there are people that can do it, for me, I couldn't picture how to combine a family and a life with dedication to the medical field. To me, they were two different things. And I see now that that's not necessarily the case, but so I was searching for, well, what can I do? And I really liked OBGYN. As I said, the only reason I didn't pick it the first time around was because I heard from general surgery first. But I really liked the surgery. So I go and I do my general surgery, my OBGYN residency, and I'm like, I just want to do the surgical part. And I was told, that's blasphemous. You can't just do the surgery part. That doesn't exist. And I made my way through residency, and I came to my very, very last rotation, and it was urogynecology. Now, the interesting thing was, when I was doing my general surgery residency, I had done a month of urology and loved urology. So urology has to do with the urinary system. So it's kidneys and bladder and the pelvis, and loved urology. But at that time, and where I was training, there weren't a lot of female role models that were urologists. And the majority of the work that I was seeing was on men, on prostates, which is an organ inside the men. And so I didn't feel like at that time that I would have fit into the urology world, even though I love that subject. So I was like, what kind of man is going to want to come to me for these problems, impotence and prostate problems and erectile dysfunction and, you know, those all sensitive issues, and who's going to want to talk to me about that as a man? So I was dissuaded from going to urology, and then here I am, my very last rotation in gynecology, and I found urogynecology. And it's interesting because as I speak right now, and this is recording this in 2019, there's only about 1,500 urogynecologists in the country. When I came out of training, there was only 6 of us in the state of New Jersey, and that was very populated. Now there's 30, 40 plus, but it's a new field. It was a field that was discovered or kind of created in the 70s. What happened was it was a combination of urology and gynecology, and really it's been renamed in more modern terms as female pelvic medicine and reconstructive surgery. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the pelvis, the pelvic floor, the pelvic organs, the intermingling between all of them. So a urogynecologist is the type of person that you want to go if you have a problem in the pelvis. There's so many different things that they specialize: incontinence, prolapse, pelvic pain. So I got to the end of my residency, and all of a sudden it was like, I love this urogyn, but it's a month before I graduate, and there's no way to all of a sudden apply for fellowship programs. That's a process that usually starts a year in advance. So it was tough because I was like, well, what am I going to do? I really like this. And I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's just a passing fleet of fancy, and I'll just go do my OBGYN. And I got a job, and luckily the universe took steps, and we ran into some contract negotiations with the job, and all of a sudden I was jobless. Here I am, a graduate of residency and not having a job. And so I went back to the doctor who ran the urogynecology fellowship program at my hospital, and I said, I'm really interested in urogynecology. So at that point in time, my plans were, well, I'll find a temporary job and delivering babies, and I'll do that until I can apply for the urogynecology. And wouldn't you have it, luck happened that the fellow who had taken the spot in the fellowship program had run into some credentialing issues, and all of a sudden there was an open spot. And so here, just luck had it, and the universe had it, and that's what I was meant to do. So I started a career in urogynecology. And once again, here I was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, wanting to make a change in the world. Fellowship was great. I get out of fellowship, I get my first job. I get my first job with a hospital, and that's when I was smacked in the face. Literally. No, not literally. I know my husband makes fun of people overusing that word literally, but I was figuratively smacked in the face because I found out medicine was not about helping people. It was not about getting people better. Especially when you worked for a hospital. It was about how many patients can you see and how much money can you make the hospital. I'd been living in a fantasy world of medical school and internship and residency where there were no time limits on how much time I could spend with a patient. You spent the time that was needed. You did what was needed to be done. And then all of a sudden in the real world, that wasn't the case. Not only was it not the case, but here I came out of training with all this equipment and trained on how to use cystoscopies and urodynamics. And these are all different tools that we use in the urogynecology world. And so I had all these things at my fingertips to get people the right diagnosis and get them the help they need. And then I come out in practice, and I get thrown in an office with nothing, and go, okay, start seeing patients. Well, wait a minute. I don't have any of the equipment that I need. So turns out hospital administrators don't really like it when you complain too much. But, as I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I'm like, yay, patients' rights. I'm going to stand up for patients' rights. I'm going to fight for what's needed. And I started writing emails to the administrators of the hospital saying, you need to give me a cystoscope. You can't tell a cardiologist, oh, go see that patient and don't use a stethoscope. Just put your head up to their chest. So I think hospital administrators take that a little bit in a threatening tone. And so once I started standing up for what was needed, I started getting the equipment. But that wasn't only the problem, because I wasn't in control. I wasn't in control because I was working for a hospital that the bottom line is make money, or basically don't go into debt. They need to stay afloat. So my personal opinion is a new patient, depending on what their conditions are, half hour to an hour and a half can be a time range for the time you need to spend with that person to get the information to begin to heal them and to help them. And what I found was that was not acceptable in this traditional hospital system care. And I'm sure there are hospitals out there that are a little bit open and things are changing, but this was my experience at the time. And so it became a factory. See more patients, spend less time. See more patients, spend less time. See more patients, spend less time. And I'm like, this is not right. And I would fight them. And of course, I would get a lot of flack. And so we would schedule the patients based on how they wanted me to see them, but I would spend the time, because I would tell each patient, I'm here for you. Yes, unfortunately, you may wait a long time for your appointment. You may wait a long time in the waiting room, but once you're in front of me, I'm all ears. Like, this is your time. I'm here for you. So that turned into many, many very late nights of the hospital, in the office, many late nights. And I have tons of stories. I'm sure that will be coming out at some point if you listen to the podcast, all the unbelievable stories of what I went through with hospital administrators and the battle. And so I did this for almost 20 years, because the truth is I didn't have the confidence to go out on my own, because I liked that umbrella of, oh, I just want to see the patients and you can worry about the business. I don't want to deal with the business aspect of things. So I kept putting myself in positions where I was working for hospitals or working for larger groups and wasn't able to do things my way. And so after 20 years of trying to make my system fit the mold of the hospital, I was like, where they say, trying to put a, peg in a square hole, or I might get that mixed up, but I couldn't make it fit. And what I did not realize, what was happening was my health was starting to fail. I didn't know, because I, like many women, I didn't put myself first. And like many overachieving women, I didn't even put my family first. My patients were first. I was on call 24/7. I could get called at any point in time. I was getting to the office at 6 o'clock in the morning, working till 10 o'clock at night, or sometimes even later, and falling asleep at the desk and being told by administrators that I was wrong for falling asleep at a desk. You know, exhaustion does a lot of things, and your body cannot keep up with that level of stress. The adrenal glands start shutting down, your other systems start shutting down. And I loved every day in the office. I loved every day being in front of the patients. I dreaded having to deal with my administrators. I dreaded having to fight the insurance companies because the insurance companies were making it harder and harder for me to do the right thing. So I think what had happened was, once again, 20 years of beating my body up, not eating right, not sleeping right, not exercise, not drinking water, all the things that I was telling patients to do for themselves, I was not doing it. I was gaining weight. I was getting sick. The final straw was I was in a car accident, and it was a minor car accident, but enough that I had some herniated discs. And what happened was I had some herniated discs. A lot of us have herniated discs. I remember the orthopedic doctor saying, you need to get surgery. And I'm like, I'm a doctor. I don't have time for surgery. You can't stop me. I have too many things to do. There's too many people relying on me, waiting for me. And I said, well, no, I'll just wait until the pain is excruciating or till something else happens. But I can heal this on my own. And there's so many stories where you can heal it on your own. I had the desire to heal it on my own, but I didn't have the proper mindset. I knew what needed to be done, but I wasn't doing it. You know, I thought I was doing the right things. I did acupuncture. I started floating, and we'll talk about that at some point in this podcast. I went to a pain specialist to have, did pain and regenerative medicine. I had injections to try to regenerate things myself. And I'm like, well, I know you can heal yourself. Why aren't things healing? Well, I wasn't taking the time. I was still working crazy hours, not getting sleep, not eating, not exercising. So you can't do all those bad things and go, well, I just want to heal. You have to really make that decision in your heart to heal, or guess what happens? If you don't make the decision, your body's going to make the decision. And that's what happened to me. I was trucking along. I had some pain, but it's not excruciating pain. It's not enough that I would stop and take 6 to 8 weeks off to have surgery. So I was just going about my day and doing what I needed to do and fighting through it because I thought it was weak to stop. It was weak to stop. And no one was going to give me a medal for taking time off and taking care of myself. That was the wrong mindset. Because in the end, the world doesn't care. Only you and your close family care, your close friends. Now, honestly, I was an employee, and even if I had owned my own business at the time, it still wouldn't have made it acceptable what I did to my body. So I fought it, and I fought it for a very long time. And then what happened is I started a new job. I thought, great. I went to a new hospital. We negotiated things. I said, this is how I want to run my practice. This is what I want to build, a pelvic floor center. I want to do great things for patients. I want to have physical therapy and counselors and nutritionists. And here there was so much talk and negotiation about what I wanted. And I thought I knew how to negotiate. I'm like, I'd been through this before. I knew how I was treated at other hospitals. So this time I'm like, I'm not taking this job unless it's absolutely what I wanted. And they said yes. They said yes to everything. I'm like, this is great. This is my dream job. I got my dream job. I'm getting paid more than I'd ever gotten paid in my life, which in the end, to me, doesn't make a difference. But it didn't make a difference because you couldn't pay me $1 bazillion a year to not do the things the way I wanted to do it. And that's what happened. I went in, I thought everything was perfect. I thought I had dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's and was walking into this amazing thing. I wanted to do team building with our office staff and wanted to set up programs for the patients. And this was going to be like the mecca of pelvic health. And I walked into that office and I found that once I signed my contract, it was a different story. The person who had been negotiating the contract with me, I never saw that person. Not on a daily basis that was intimately involved with the running of the practice. I had a regional manager that came in and started saying no to everything that I wanted to do. My first week I got in trouble. First time I ever got in trouble at work. I mean, I had experience running a practice in that at my other jobs, I had done everything. I had ordered the supplies. I set up the office. I did the labs. I did the paperwork. I mean, I had a job at one point where I didn't even have an assistant. I was bringing the patients back to the room. I was doing the labs on their urinalysis. I was taking their blood pressures. I was doing everything. So I knew how to do everything. So here I am. I come in. I'm like, this is great. I start setting up the office. I start setting up the rooms. I say to the office manager, can I help get the supplies? And she said, great, because I don't know what to order for you. Go ahead. And we got on the computer and I started ordering the supplies. I said, is there any budget? No. They said, get what you need. Okay, great. I didn't go crazy. I didn't go extravagantly. We ordered some syringes and gauze and stuff. Next thing you know, this regional manager of mine comes in. First time I'm meeting her in a professional position, in a professional status as me as an employee. And I get yelled at. I get in trouble because it says in my contract I'm not allowed to buy things without being unauthorized. And let me tell you, to stand there and be yelled and screamed at like I was a 3-year-old was very, very belittling. It was difficult. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I'm just trying to help. This is all I want to do. I want to help people, whether it's patients or businesses. And, at the same time, I was getting my MBA and I was, had all these wonderful classes and I was being exposed to other people and other corporations that were forward thinking and inclusive. And I was starting to see how the medical system was antiquated and backwards, and the things that we weren't encouraging our physicians to practice what they preached. So I started reaching out to the higher administrators and be like, listen, I'm so excited. Let's change. I've written these programs, how we can make this better. I can, I have papers that I was doing every single one of my papers in school on this health system and how I could improve it. And I was just getting doors slammed in my face left and right. And being told, you just do your urogynecology and leave the business to us. And I said, oh, I guess that's the way it's going to be here. So I had a hard time accepting that. So then the same thing. I just was trying to see my patients. I was trying to make it a better world. And now what was happening was things were crumbling because these expectations of what I had pictured this job to be and what I thought I could create, I was being told no at every step of the way. I was being told, no, you can't do that. I had a business partner who I thought we were going to build this great thing together. And I was told by this person too, no, I'm not going to do things your way. When before I walked into that office, everything I mentioned, it was like, yes, this is great. So all of a sudden, it was very difficult. It was very difficult to go to work knowing that I was just a number. The patients were just a number. See more patients, spend less time. See more patients, spend less time. And you're getting written up because you're being in the office too late. You're going to be written up because you're there on the weekends doing charts, because I refused to skimp on my records and my reports on patients were 10 plus pages. Because to me, the right way to do it was to look at the patient as a person, not as a number, not as an assembly line. Next. It was not the way to do it. But you can say that I was at fault. I accept that. It doesn't upset me. You can say that I was at fault because I did not wish to change, but I realize there was no changing me. That was not the place for me to be. I didn't realize it at the time. I still was like, you know what? I can change this. I can make the world a better place. I'm going to be the person that steps up and fights for my patients. But what was happening was that stress, that lack of sleep, that poor eating, not drinking enough fluids caught up with me. And I couldn't make the decision to leave that job. I wouldn't leave that job. Why would I leave that job? I had made a commitment. I had made a 3-year commitment. Why would I have left that? Well, what happened next was subconsciously, and this is something I want you all to know, you need to identify your needs and your wants, because if you don't do it consciously, your body will decide it for you. And this is what started to happen. Is yes, I was unhappy, but I'd always been a fighter. Until all of a sudden, my body's like, well, guess what? You're not going to make the decision. We're making the decision for you. And that's what happened. It's interesting. I had a car accident 2 years prior to that job. I was sore for a total of maybe 6 months, maybe a little longer, and nothing that was stopping me from doing my job. I was able to go and do things like I always did, a couple modifications, but there was nothing that was stopping me. I had worked for 2 years and had nothing that had kept me home. All of a sudden, I'm in this job that I'm unhappy with, and things started happening. I was with a patient one day, and I turned and went to reach for something, and I felt a pop in my arm. I'm like, I was just sitting and turning and reaching. Well, when you've been under that much stress, your body doesn't heal. And when it doesn't heal, little simple things can really throw you off kilter. So I apparently injured my elbow. But it seems a lot more than my elbow. It was very painful. And then I said, well, was that my neck? What could I turn to reach? Did I herniate the disc more? And I went to the orthopedic doctor, and they were like, yes, your neck is worse. You have to stop working. And I was like, no, it'll heal. I'm going to do all these things. I once again got back into all the alternative medicine. I'm going to heal it. But then what started happening was I started losing feeling in my arm, and the pain started getting worse. And I said, well, this is so weird. I didn't have the pain before. And I was starting to get numbness in my fingers. And this is when I went back to the doctor, and the doctor says to me, you have to have neck surgery. You have to have neck surgery. If you don't have neck surgery, this could be permanent. And I said, I don't want to have neck surgery. I know what happens if, you can do the most perfect surgery. If you mess up, I'm paralyzed from the waist down. Who wants to have surgery? Who wants the risks? I don't want to have surgery. He says to me, you cannot put this off any longer. Not only can you not put this off any longer, but you have to stop performing surgery on people, because if you're good now, but if you get any worse, he's like, I can't back up what you're doing. And that scared me because, like I said, my whole purpose was to help people. And I didn't ever want to be a problem where I'd be a danger to a person. So I went back to my work and I said, I can't do surgery anymore. I've been advised not to do surgery. And not only that, but I need to get my own neck surgery. Well, let me tell you, working in the healthcare field, you think they'd be like, oh my God, we're so sorry. This is, what can we do to help you? No, that wasn't it. All of a sudden, everyone got very cold because they realized I was going to be there to make them money. I wasn't going to be there to, generate a revenue. All of a sudden it became, oh, well, if you're going to be out, you need to start seeing more patients to make up for the time you're out. So, as I got closer to surgery, of course I was terrified, but, my body was telling me, I was getting progressively worse as we got closer and closer to surgery. And, I look back now and I'm like, it was my body saying, get out of there. So your body, your subconscious will do it. You have to listen to your body because it will tell you what you need. And so what happened next was I had my surgery. Surgery went well. Recovery was going well. I mean, I still had the same problems because, I had 2 years now of nerve damage that had built up, and it takes nerves time to recover. So I took off my 6 weeks and I was planning on going back to work. And as we got closer to returning to work, the pain in my arm started to get worse. And it started to get worse. And the pain in my neck. And the symptoms started coming back. And I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? I just had the surgery, supposed to fix it. Why is it coming back? Part of the explanation at that time was, well, your nerves are regenerating. When your nerves regenerate, it's painful. But what I really think was that my body was once again telling me, don't go back to that job. Don't go back. But I couldn't not go back to that job. I had a contract. I had people who were relying on me. I had things that needed to be taken care of. I remember I was in a meeting with the administrators about my returning, and I was all planning on going back. And I was being berated with and literally abused about getting my surgeon on the phone because they wanted to know what was going on. And this was way before I was even had to come back to work. And I'm like, I'm planning on coming back. Get your surgeon on the phone right now. We need to know what's happening. Well, I started getting smart and I realized that I had a clause in my contract that if I was sick for 90 days, that they could terminate my contract. And I started getting panicky. And the stress started again. And the sleepless nights. And when you're stressed, you don't heal. And my neck and my arm were getting worse and worse and worse. And then I remember coming home one day and I get this little text message on my phone. And I get these little updates when you get a Federal Express package. And it goes, beep, you have a package. And in the app, I could see that there was a Federal Express package that was delivered to me. I could see who it was delivered from. And all of a sudden I had this thought of, oh my God, I'm getting fired. They're terminating my contract. And this was even before I was sick for more than 90 days, but terminating my contract. And it's funny the way the mind works. I was scared because I'd never been fired in my life. But at the same time, this sense of relief that I didn't have to do the things that I didn't believe in. And I didn't have to watch around me patients being treated in ways that were unacceptable. I didn't have to do that ever again. So part of my recovery and in the time I've had off was to do a lot of reading, do a lot of studying about healing the own body. I'm a project in the making, but what I want to let people know is that there is ways, and we're going to be examining them with all these wonderful, great speakers that I have coming on here. I'll put my little tidbits in and put some things in there about how I can relate, but I want you to think, like, how do you relate? How are you that person? And what can you take from the information? So we're giving you this gift. We're giving you this gift that you are an amazing, wonderful person. And if you're sick, if you're suffering, you're going to these doctors and they're telling you it's your stomach, or they're telling you it's your heart, or it's your diabetes, or it's this part or that part. No, you're greater than the sum of your parts. And this podcast is going to show you how you become greater and become into your bigness. I'm looking forward to leading you on this journey as we go through it together of becoming wonderful, powerful women that our families deserve, that the world deserves, that we deserve. Life is a fantastic trip, and there's no reason to be stressed and not live your life to the fullest. We just need to find those steps so that you can get out of what's holding you back, what's keeping you sick, what's keeping you down, and have you rise up and become the great, wonderful person that you were meant to be. So please follow me here and listen to this podcast. You can also go to my website, drbetsygreenleaf.com. That's DRBETSYGREENLEAF.com. There's an area where you can suggest topics that you'd like to hear on the podcast. We got a whole bunch lined up, so we'll get to it. But I would say right now we almost have half a year worth of speakers already lined up for your information. But keep the comments coming because it'll be great. Also, what I'd like you to do is follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Pass on this information, because even if it's something that you're not suffering from, you could do good in the world by passing this information on to other people. And that's the only way we're going to get better, is for us to share the information with others and share the health and the wellness. And I'd also like to put in a little plug for a store that I have that I'm very proud of, that's developing each day and looking forward to your comments for products that you want. So I have a store called the Pelvic Floor Store, PELVIC, FLOORSTORE.com. So Pelvic Floor Store was my brainchild because I found that my patients were having a very difficult time finding pelvic floor products. A lot of these health and wellness companies won't sell on Amazon because this is their way to control counterfeits. And so patients were having to go to this website and that website to get the products that they needed. So I wanted to have a centralized place where you can find everything that you need. And so we're constantly adding to the inventory, and I'm constantly looking for suggestions. And even more so, if there's a product, the good amount of them I've tried myself, but if there is a product on there that you have a problem with, or you don't like, or there's any kind of issue, let me know, because we'll change it. I mean, this store is for you. This store was meant for your wellness, for your health. And so my job is to be your servant and provide you the things that you need to get better. So we do that on the podcast with information, and we do that on the store with products. So let us know let me know what you need. And once again, you can also send us a message, and there is an area on the website where you can send me a message of the things that you need. Once again, I want you to know, have a wonderful day, and I'm looking forward to being with you here next time. And remember, you're greater than the sum of your parts.